Thank you guys for tuning in for another video, and today I'm going to be talking about body colour. Now, what the hell am I talking about? Now, before I heard about this technique, I believed it could have been some mysterious medium that I've never heard of before. In reality, the term body colour refers to an opaque water-based paint that's made by mixing watercolour with white pigments such as Chinese white. This in fact dates back to the 15th century, but has now really become known as gouache. I recently came across this beautiful book on Turner by Andrew Wilton, where I found these fantastic plates had actually been created in a combination of watercolour and body colour. And by studying these plates, we really begin to reveal some of those alternative techniques. So now let's compare our watercolour and body colour. Watercolour being transparent and useful for washes. On its own, we really get to see the paper showing through. Now with body colour, we get to see just how different this medium is. But what we really need to see is how they work side by side. So once we have let each side dry, we can see the clear difference in opacity. This is where body colour gives us that extra tool in our arsenal, because now we can make our watercolour paint behave differently. I want to share with you now how I explore this technique in my most recent painting. So without further ado, let's jump into that demonstration. To begin, I'm working in a pretty ordinary fashion. Here I'm pre-wetting my paper for a wet on wet approach. This provides me with rapid coverage and a beautiful bleed effect. As my subject is underwater, I'm making use of angular strokes to represent light rays. Shortly, I'm going to demonstrate how body colour comes into play in this watercolour. But first, let's make use of working while the paper is still wet. Now I'm describing the ripples on the surface using a small brush that is damp but actually has no paint loaded onto it. In preparation for our body colour experiment, I'm marking out the foreground. I'm doing this so that I have a plan not to be aimlessly applying my textured body colour. After all, the body colour I'll be using is white, which can be confusing against the white of the paper. To make this a little easier, I carry out a little sketch in burnt umber. That will really help me in describing this coral scene. Here is our body colour. This is a Series 1 Winsor & Newton Chinese white. This isn't gouache, but actually watercolour as labelled. I'm going to use it straight from the tube for my first application. I use it to describe my lightest lights from my picture reference. Now of course, another way I could create these highlights is with liquid mask, which would produce a cleaner or sleeker result, but trades away that painterly feel to the picture. Now this medium straight from the tube is very thick, making it difficult for painstaking detail. Once watered down, it does lose its effect. Another application method can be creating a body colour that's no longer white. I found this really works well in dramatic skies where you would need a combination of transparent and opaque passages of painting. This works well for clouds, but didn't really work for me in this scene. What actually worked well here was washing over them highlights once they were dry, treating this a bit like an oil painting. What's really important to remember here though is because my Chinese white is water soluble, it will dissolve and blend into the rest of the watercolour on the paper, so do be careful not to wash it all away. A good thing about this is how stark you can be, because if it's too much, you can always rework it or lift it out with more water. This is the approach I went for here because it reminds me of just how much I love working with oils. In this clip, I add a strong stroke of blue watercolour, knowing I can soften its effect immediately after. And to really create that beautiful effect of that subtle blue, I can use a damp paper towel to blend it however I desire. Here was my result on the background of the water. I really loved this because it had more of a painterly feel rather than a stylish watercolour. Let's jump forward to reveal what happens when we push the body colour technique to the extreme. In order to do this, I wanted to experiment with a very unconventional method. In place of my Chinese white, I'm actually going to use an acrylic gesso for intense texture, while also creating a solid barrier between the watercolour and the paper. This was transformative in producing a painting that was much more like it had been executed in oils or acrylics. My concerns were the durability of this unconventional approach. However, by using quality products in combination with varnishes and glass, we should see a longer lifespan to this highly experimental work. But if archival quality is a real concern, sticking to your water-soluble mediums in watercolour might be your best bet. As after all, many old watercolours are not the most stable, and we see this in museums where very old watercolours are kept in the dark. Now being highly experimental, I'm going to see just how well watercolour binds to this thick impasto body colour. To my surprise, this actually worked really well. I suspected there could be some beading up or repelling of the watercolour, however I was impressed by just how well the paint was actually adhering. So by using this body colour technique under the transparent watercolour, this took my watercolour painting to the next level, really helping to describe the rocky jagged coral full of colour and life. To contrast the wonderful array of colour, I used black to draw out forms and shadows in the coral, directly on top of my body colour. What really makes this technique so effective is increasing the dynamic of how light passes through the layers of paint in the painting. Rather than just having the flat, absorbent paper surface, the watercolour can behave both solid and transparent. So guys, if you found these tips useful, leave me a comment below to let me know what worked well. Also, let's hear your approach to watercolour in the comments. One last thing is that I will fully list all materials and references in the description below. So thank you so much for watching guys, and make sure to subscribe for videos just like this, and I'll see you in the next one.